first of all, we have to start with your name.
My name is Cohen. Simon.
Simon Cohen.
That's right.
Right. Now, where were you born, Simon?
I was born in Bedford Street in the East End of London.
Was it a house, a flat?
We had 2 rooms in the top floor, and I was the 6th child.
The 6th child. So it was very crowded.
Oh, yeah. Well, there was 3 floors.
There was 3 floors, yeah.
You see. In them days, you didn't have a house. I tell you this, that we had 2 rooms right at the top floor, and on the middle floor was a water on the landing, and that was a workshop on that middle floor.
What sort of workshop was it?
Clothing. You know, all the machines were in there, and the people from the ground floor, they used to work up there as well, and that's where we had there.
Were the youngest? Were you the middle?
I was the youngest
You were
at
the
that
youngest.
time. I was the 6th child.
The 6th one.
Yes.
And did your parents have any more after you?
Yeah, one.
One.
When we had our own business.
Yes. Now, where did your parents come from?
My parents came from they spoke Polish, but they lived in Russia. You know, during that in the 1890s, Russia took over part of Poland, and so they were actually living in Russia, but it was Poland. It had been Poland.
Do you remember the name of the town where they...
Yes, I will remember it, but
Fine,
you know, my
always put
memory
that
is
in.
very bad.
And your mother came from the same place?
Yes, yes. My mother was born on a chicken farm there.
And did they both come to this country together?
Yes.
They
My
came?
mother was married at 15
It was very
to
young.
come to England. My grandparents came first. Then they sent for the son.
That's an unusual way round.
Yes, they did. They came here and they settled in Bristol. So consequently, our roots go back to Bristol.
So your grandparents went to Bristol,
Sure.
and what did they do? They set up a trade.
They had a baker shop in Bristol.
And then they sent for your mother and your father.
They sent for my father. He got married out there and came over here, and he settled in London. Then they sent for the other brothers and the whole family, and we got a big family.
A very
You see, and wait a moment. One brother was in Bristol. No, 3 brothers were in Bristol, and 2 sisters were in Bristol. Then my father was the eldest. Then the other brother went to Cardiff, where he became a very, very well-known personality there. He was with the Rank organisation in the film industry, and he was the West of England representative.
The film industry was just beginning in those days.
Yes, in them days. My other uncle went up to Glasgow. He was in the uniforms, second-hand uniforms and things like that, and then afterwards clothing.
Now, do you remember the year that they came over?
My grandparents came over in the 1890s.
And your parents, your father?
My father and my mother came over in 1895, something like that, yes.
And your family name's always been Cohen?
There's a little bit of a crisis about it, which I knew nothing at all about. My eldest brother, you see, we're all known, on my birth certificate and everything, it's all Cohens, we're all Cohens. But it seemed that there was a different name attached to it, and it was put down on my brother's birth certificate, which he had a terrific trouble afterwards to reverse that to Cohen.
What was the name put down? This we can always fill in later.
Okay, and it's a very, very well known. It's one of the biggest jewellery companies in England, and of course it's been changed. They were in our mishpucha, you know, in our family.
So
But
when your parents came to London, they settled, first of all,
In
where?
Bedford
Bedford
Street.
And they started in business straight away?
No, my father was a journeyman baker, and that's how he started the union. He was the first one, he started this union, and it was a fabulous union.
Tell me again the name of the union.
The Jewish Journeyman Bakers Union.
So none of them had premises at this time?
No, they
used
were
to
all
travel?
working men. They were all working men. And as I say, my father was a founder member. They were a very powerful union.
How many members did they have?
Well, I
begin
couldn't
with-
tell you. I
No,
couldn't
to
tell you.
begin
All
with
I can
then,
tell you is that they finished up with about 5.
So it was
All
a
the
very
Jewish.
small one.
It was the smallest in the world.
Mm.
My late brother, my eldest brother, who was also a baker in his time, he used to broadcast about the smallest union in the world.
And we have copies of this now in the TUC house.
Oh yes, the photograph as well is there. The photograph is there. And it's a fabulous photograph, I tell you that. But how shall I say it? Master bakers, you see, had to support the union. And what they had to do in them days, that every loaf of bread that was sold in a kosher baker shop had to have a label on it, a stamp from the union. And if they ran out, the workers wouldn't bake the bread.
Now this was just the kosher.
Only the kosher.
Only the kosher.
Only the kosher, yeah. They had to put a stamp on it from the union. And that's how it was.
I've never heard of
Yes, that is really true.
That's right. Now you were the youngest
Of
of
6.
How old, when you were born, how old was the oldest?
I should say he was about 14 or 15.
So he was already working.
Oh yes. No, I don't think he was. Was he working? No, he was still at school. He went to a higher school. He
So
went to
would
a higher
you,
school.
in those days, would you say your parents were well off?
No,
They weren't.
no. No, they weren't well off. Not
But you
at
all
that
had
period.
an education.
We all went to Rutland Street School
And
in
what
the East
year? We didn't ask you this. What year were you born?
1910.
1910.
Yes. I'm 77 now.
When you were at home with your parents, did they speak English or Yiddish?
Well, my parents spoke Yiddish, you see. But that's an early period, because just a little time after I was born, my father opened his first baker shop. He was financed by a friend, a master baker, who helped him. And so we had our own baker shop.
And where was this baker shop?
Charles Street. On that corner
Where
is
we've
the
got
corner
this-
Wellesley Street and Charles Street. And that is Arbor Square. Just the turning right facing us, Arbor Square. And I still went to Rutland Street School. It was a long way away, you know. It's a couple of miles away, I suppose.
You had to walk
And I
back.
still went. All my brothers and sisters, we all went to Rutland Street School. Then they went to, they won scholarships, and they went to, what do you call it, school?
High school?
To high schools, yeah. It was I forget what they called it in them days. There was a very famous school there, but they didn't go to that school because you had to pay for it.
What school was that?
That was in Arbor Square. It was a marvellous school. They had their own brigade, you know, they taught them soldiering and bugles and drummers and all that.
You had to pay to go to that
Yes,
school.
that was you had to have a very, very high standard for that. But I forget, it was like a secondary school that you went on. But I was about 10, I think, when my father sold that business and we moved to Highbury. And that's where I went to school. I went to school in Highbury. And I got mitzvahed in Highbury.
In the Orthodox synagogue?
Oh yes, of course.
Orthodox
It's not
synagogue?
there anymore.
No, what was it called?
Barnsbury Park Synagogue. It was in Barnsbury, but although the area was Highbury, that area where we lived was Barnsbury.
Now, what do you remember about those childhood memories in Charles Street?
In Charles Street, well, the war.
The First World War?
Yes,
How
all.
old were you when the war broke
I was only a
out?
little
Okay.
kiddie, but all our family were allowed to go across the road into the police station. We went down in the cells there with all the wives of the police,
Why was it?
because it's shelter.
Oh, was it?
There was a shelter down there, you see. And what used to happen, My father, God rest his soul, used to about 2 o'clock in the morning, he'd bring over a whole tray of bagels, and, or not bagels, pretzels, you know. He used to take them all down there, and look at everybody used to go mad for them. And so we were allowed down there. We never went anywhere else.
So your father never was involved in the war in the respect?
No, he
Because he
wasn't
would have been
involved in the war at
interned.
all. He was, as I say, he was a baker. He was a what do you call it, reserved occupation.
And what about your oldest brother?
My eldest brother, he worked in an aircraft factory in Bedford Street. It used to be, he used to make the wings, the wood, in wood, for the wings of aeroplanes.
This was the very, very early aeroplanes
Yes,
again, because there was no
I'm
air
telling
force
you.
in those days.
No, this is how it was. It used to be. I wish I'd have known it. I would have written it down. The names. It's a very famous factory, clothing factory, and during that period, they turned it over into wood to make these aeroplane wings there, in Bedford Street.
What else do you remember about your childhood during the war or after the war?
Well, during the war I was in school, and we used to, was 90% Jewish boys there, although it was a girls' school as well on the side, but I was in the infant school then, and I've still got a picture of it.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well, we can photograph that later.
I'll show you that. It's a smashing picture. I'm not joking. And that was in the infant school. And we had, in that class, some of the top people of today were multi-millionaires today, were in that school.
Did you find the discipline better in those days?
We didn't have a lot of discipline.
No.
We were too young for it. Another thing is this, you see, we used to close half Friday, 1 o'clock, what do you call it, you see, and so consequently, I loved those days.
Do you remember what time you started in the mornings?
Yeah, 9 o'clock.
You started at 9 o'clock?
Yes, and then we came home at 12, and then we went back at 2.
Did you have a break in the mornings for play? Or?
Yes, we did have 10 minutes or something to go to the toilet or whatever it was. And in the afternoon we had the same. We used to finish at 4:30 in the
Except
afternoon.
on the Fridays when it was
On
shift
Friday
hours?
it was 1 o'clock.
Did you have to wear a uniform
No,
to school?
no.
Were the teachers quite strict with you?
We had some Jewish teachers and English, but how shall I say it? They weren't very strict with us.
No.
We had no canes and all that kind of
No
thing.
canes.
We wasn't old enough for canes,
No.
we were too young.
What about when you went on to the junior school?
That was a different matter. I was in. I'll tell you this. It's funny because when I started telling you about it, it's funny. Our school upstairs was right opposite the London Hospital Nurses' Home. That's right down the side turning. And I can remember when we used to go in there, we could never get near the windows because the central heating thing, the old heating things were there. And so we thought, oh, well. But then when they got, go to a higher class, we used to go over there, and then we found out why they all wanted to go there. It was the nurses who used to undress there. They knew we were watching. You know, we were only little tots like that, and we used to watch them undress and things like that. And I'm laughing about it because, I mean, it's true. This is really true, is it? And we played games, but I wasn't old enough to participate in any of those type of games. We played football in the playground there, and our headmaster was very well known, you know, in his time there. And as I say, some of the Jewish masters were marvellous there. But then we had one master who died. He was an artist. And so consequently we didn't have a decent teacher to take over. They were short of staff. And so consequently the headmaster would take us and this one would take us. And It wasn't a very good education,
No.
not up to that age. But as I say, at the crucial time, I went over to
Highbury.
Barnesbury, and I had a very good.
How old were you when you moved again?
Well, I must have been about 10
So you studied for your bar mitzvah lessons
in Highbury.
in Highbury.
Yes.
Did your parents light the candle? Did they keep a
We
strict
always did. We always had a kosher, very, very strictly kosher house. I'll tell you this. We had a house with a tremendous bakehouse. Oh, a very, very big one it was. Now, my mother, God rest her dear soul, used to go down to Highbury, what do you call it, the main road there, and get on a tram to City Road, change at City Road, and she went down to the East End to not Watley Street, a market, a street market there, and she used to get 2 great big bags full of food and everything to bring back, all kosher, strictly kosher. We always kept a strictly kosher house. And then after about a year, my dad bought for the firm a small barrow, what do you call it, straw top. And I used to go down on a Friday, I used to go down these 2 streets, and we also lived at the top of a hill, you know, and I used to meet my mum off the tram.
It was a pushing barrow.
Yes, oh yes. And I used to meet my mum, and I used to put all the bags and everything in the barrow and take it back home, honestly.
So she never worked in the shop? Or
Sure, my mum always was in the shop, oh yeah. You see, now when you said about my parents, my mum always served in the shop, and so consequently she spoke English, you see, but with nearly 90% Jewish customers, so she spoke Yiddish with them. If they wanted to discuss something private, they used to talk Yiddish. But we knew what they were talking about, you know. But they could speak English. My father, my brothers taught my father how to sign his name. And he used to sign from down here, he used to go up to there. That's how he used to sign his name. But at least he could do that, you see. But my mother couldn't read English. She couldn't. She couldn't read books or things like that. But she was a proper mother. Don't forget, in the meantime, had another son. When we moved over to Highbury, she had a son while we lived in Highbury. He was born in Barnesbury.
So he's
11 years younger than me. Oh yeah.
She had a very big gap between her children.
So, otherwise, it was all 2s and all the way through. See?
How many of your family, your brothers, are still living?
I'll tell you, my 2 eldest brothers both died. So I've got 2 sisters, I've got 1 older brother and 1 younger brother, and myself. There's still 5 of us.
So
still
a
alive.
very long-lived family.
Well, my father died, he was 53.
So he was young, wasn't he?
Well, he'd worked himself to shred, he worked day and night, you know, bakers in them days worked all night. And
what about your mother?
my mother died, she was 75. We were living in Park Lane then, in Wembley. She died just after the war.
Right. You bar mitzvah?
I was bar mitzvahed in Highbury.
What do you remember about the religion school in those
Well, it was a lovely shul.
Yes?
It was very, very high-class shul, and I used to sing in the choir there. That's where I learned to sing in the choir. And the minister then was also very well-known minister, Wally Levine, Rabbi Levine. And the shul is not there anymore.
No, was it a United shul?
How shall I say it? It was a United synagogue.
Yes.
Yes, it wasn't but it was a lovely synagogue. Really was. And it was right opposite my school. So what we used to do is this, you see. We used to have Hebrew classes in my school. So I used to go to school during the daytime and go back in there. When we lived in Bedford Street, I went to a private rabbi in one of the little turnings there, and we used to pay a half a crown.
you remember what age you started?
I was about 4.
Mm.
I went to school when I was 4. You see? My mum, God rest her dear soul, she fell down the stairs and broke both her arms when I was a baby. And so I went to school um, when I was about 4. My sisters were there, so if there was anything like that, they used to send me upstairs to my sisters, you know, and things like that.
So you started your religious training first of all with
Oh,
this rabbi,
yes, with a private rabbi.
and did he do stories, or did it was purely reading and writing?
Reading, no writing at all.
Just
Just
purely
reading. The Aleph base we taught. And then they started to teach us the singing there. How shall I say it? We used to in the Aleph base, it used to be done to music. So we got to know the Aleph base, and we got to know the, what do you call this? Then they started teaching us, and I was about 6.5, 7 then. Do you know on the Haftorahs and so on, they got little signs there. Well, they started to teach us the signs and what they were. Don't ask me what they were. I
It's
don't
just when you go high and when you go low.
Yes. Oh yes. It had the whole. Mafta. Mafta da la da 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 da.
So you learnt this very, very early.
Well, we didn't learn it. We used to copy it, everybody else. But gradually we started to get used to it. It's the same thing. I mean, I know all the songs in there. And it's just a force of habit like that. But the main song that I can remember is the Adonai Along, that we used to sing when I was in the choir. We used to sing it in all different ways, you see.
Was it a mixed choir?
We did have a mixture when I used to sing in the East End. I was in Stepney Green. There used to be the United Synagogue. You see, the United Synagogue was like the Liberal Synagogue today. They were considered that the United Synagogue was nothing. It was all the, what do you call it, the Sephardish, and also the strictly Orthodox. That's the shul that my father used to go to in Stepney Green. And my brother got bar mitzvahed there. And
But the women still had to sit separate.
oh yes,
Was it
up
upstairs?
in the balcony.
Up in the balcony. Was there a curtain? So
No curtains. It was
curtain.
upstairs in the balcony.
So
oh
they could
yes.
see over quite well.
Oh yes, they could see everything. And then afterwards, as I say, in Highbury there was also a beautiful balcony upstairs.
There was no curtain at all.
No
so they could
curtains
see.
whatsoever. Only the little steebles used to have the curtains. You see, where we were was a proper synagogue.
And the one at Bedford Street, where you bar mitzvahed, was that a mixed
I wasn't bar
choir?
mitzvahed in Bedford Street. I was bar mitzvahed in Highbury.
Was that a mixed choir in that one? Or?
No, that was a steeple. There wasn't a choir. There wasn't a, what do you call it? It was like a big house that they turned it into a steeple. And then there was another one, they closed a pub down on the corner of one of the streets, it's just off Bedford Street. No, that was Rutland Street. On the corner of Rutland Street and Bedford Street, there was a what do you call it, a pub, and it lost its licence, and they made that into a synagogue. But we never went there because after that time we moved to Harbour Square, you see, in Charles Street.
So how long did you live in Highbury for?
We lived in Highbury until I was, I think it was 15. I was getting on 15. I turned 14.
Had you taken any exams at school?
I did. How shall I say it? I had 2, even in Rutland Street School. I never went to school without a dictionary. It's been one of my prime things in my lifetime is a dictionary. I've always had it. I've always been marvellous. And every one of my grandchildren have got dictionaries. My children had them and my grandchildren. And please believe me, there was nobody in the class that could ever come anywhere near me. I was always top. I always had a vivid imagination. And I could write. We had, what do you call it? Oh, my brain is not functioning at all like this with the names there. We used to write essays. You know, they'd give you something, and you'd had to write an essay on it, and I always came out top. My spelling was never once did I ever make a mistake in spelling. The teacher used to borrow my what do you call it, my dictionary. Actually, it was a prize of my eldest brother. It was that thick, and it had indexes and indices and everything.
Still got this dictionary?
I haven't got that one,
No.
but I've still got. I gave it. I had got a dictionary like that as well, and I gave it to my youngest son. He still got it, and that's the one that I had. But the original one that my brother gave it to me that I had, that's gone a long time ago. Who knows where it is there?
So you left Highbury when you were 15?
Just getting on for 15, yes.
And where did you go to then?
My father, unfortunately, he wasn't very well. My two brothers who worked there, they got fed up with it. They didn't want to do it. And so consequently my father sold the business and we moved back to the East End. And we moved back, I was turned 14. I wasn't 15 yet. Oh, well, I can easily find out and work it back. But we lived right next door, the Whitechapel Library, in the High Street Whitechapel.
In a couple of rooms again? Or?
No, we had the entire upper house. It was above a shop. And we had the entire house above that. Well, my eldest brother was married then, and my eldest sister was married, so there were still 5 of us at home. And I used to look down from my bedroom into the library, and the Jewish Art Gallery, the Whitechapel Art Gallery was only about 10 yards further along.
And did you have a shop then?
No, I went to work there. My father went to work for this great friend of his, who was also a fabulous firm, and
as a baker?
As a baker.
Do you remember the name of the bakery?
This bakery.
Well, we can put this name of this bakery in.
Well, I can get it because this man, the baker, also opened a cinema. He owned a cinema in Commercial Road, which afterwards became very famous. I'll remember it. I mean, I can tell you this.
Well,
I'll have to ask my sister. They give me all the names.
So your father went to work for this bakery, and you also went to work there, or?
My father?
Yeah.
I never was a baker.
No, never.
No. When I was a kid at school, I used to fry the donuts. When I used to come home, I used to fry the donuts. That's the only. I never worked on with the bread.
So you were 15 when you moved back.
Yeah.
And
then I became a hairdresser.
A hairdresser?
Yeah.
Ladies hairdressing?
No, barber.
A barber.
There was no ladies hairdressers in them days. No ladies hairdressers. There was a shingle. Do you remember the shingle or the Eton crop? No, crikey. An Eton crop was a man's haircut, but not short back and sides, but for a girl. And then there was a shingle, was tapered with a line at the back.
Where did you learn this hairdressing trade from?
I went to school.
You went to school?
I went to
What made you decide to want to be a hairdresser?
I liked it. I loved the barber shop because when I used to go to the barber myself, I used to love it. I can tell you this, that my sisters saw my first haircut, crying their eyes out. I was pure blonde. I was pure blonde for most of my life. It's only in my latter years that my hair has gone dark. But I've got no grey hair. Well, I've got some grey hair now.
It's because you were blonde.
I was pure blonde. There's a lot of people don't believe. They say that I use certain things for my hair. I don't. If I did, I would tell you. All I can tell you is this, that we've got marvellous hair in our family. Every one of us has got marvellous hair.
Were you all blondes?
No. I was blonde. My younger brother had brown hair and had a blonde streak of about 1 inch wide right across. A blonde streak. He's got today the most glorious head of hair you've ever seen in your life. Pure white. It's absolutely pure white.
So he's no longer got his streak.
No, no, no. It's all pure white. My eldest son hasn't got a grey hair in his head. That boy who got married there, that one is my second son. He's just turned 50. He's pure white. But my other sons haven't got. My daughter, she has got grey streaks in her hair. I've got 3 daughters, and only my oldest daughter. She's a grandmother, and she's got a few grey hairs.
Let's go back to the barbers.
Yeah.
You went in as an apprentice?
As an apprentice, yes.
Did you have to pay for this apprenticeship?
No, I didn't. I used to get a £0.50 a week.
Any tips?
Yeah, I used to have to sweep the floor, clean the windows, all that kind of thing. That's what I had to do. And then they used to let me finish a client off. The barber used to do the work, you see, the cutting and everything, and I'd get the brush, clean it all off, and put some spray on and comb his hair, gradually. And then, at one time, they used to use a razor, and then I was allowed to use the razor. I used to practice. I used to give people, elderly people used to come in, very poor, I used to save the cigarette ends in a box. And when they came in, I used to give them the cigarette ends, and they'd let me practice shaving them.
Now shaving their face?
Their face, yes.
Because that's what barbers did in those days.
Of course, we all used to do razors, shaving, and...
Did you used to use the very long... You used to have to sharpen?
Still gone.
Yes?
I still use an open razors.
Really?
Yeah, I'll show you some. I've still got dozens of them. I still do a few clients, a few, and I was very good. 10 or 8, I worked in Brick Lane, and then the shop moved to opposite the market, the fruit market in Commercial Street.
Spitalfields?
Pardon?
Near
It's
Spitalfields?
near Spitalfields there, but it's a turning right opposite. A well-known turning, that is. And I used to work in there, in that barber shop.
What sort of hours did you do in this barber?
We used to work, I'll tell you the work. We used to start at 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. Wait a moment. We used to work Sunday in them days as well. 7 days a week we used to work. And Sunday we used to finish at 4 o'clock in the afternoon from 8 o'clock in the morning. Saturday we used to work till 9 o'clock at night. From 7 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. And when it came to 9 o'clock at night, what do you think we closed? All the people used to come out of the pubs. And we used to have to start working. We used to finish about 10 o'clock at night. And I was only 15.
Shaves or haircuts?
90% was shaves.
Yes.
And once a fortnight was a haircut. But every day they used to come in, every 2 days for shaving.
What did they used to charge to be shaved when you first started?
I'll tell you, it was in our shop that we worked, which was a good class shop, was 8 pence a haircut. That's the old 8 pennies, when it used to be 12 pence was a shilling, and 4 pence for a shave. Now shave had your hot towels as well. So you had hot towels for 4 pence. Then I went away from there, and I went to a different shop. It was a busy shop there, and it belonged to a relative that in the finish I bought that shop. It was,
Where was this?
in Cable Street.
Oh,
You've heard of Cable
yes,
Street?
I've heard of Cable
Well,
Street.
I had a big barber shop, and then wait a moment, I was getting married then. I was 20, we were getting married. And we had the upstairs done, and that's where we moved afterwards. We had 2 rooms upstairs, and we used to let the 2nd and 3rd floor there.
So at the time you were getting married, the year was...
Just 19... I got married in 1928.
28. Now, you bought this shop or rented it?
I rented the shop.
Rented the shop.
Rented the shop. I used to pay... it was £1 a week plus 10 shillings a week rates, £36 a month.
And that was
For the whole house.
And that was the upstairs as well?
Yes, the whole house.
So you lived on the first floor?
We lived on the 1st floor, and we had 2 rooms at the back of the barber shop. 2 rooms. We had a sitting room, a dining room, and we had a toilet outside. We had no bathrooms or anything like that.
No.
We didn't have anything like that.
So where did you used to go for your
Well,
bath?
we used to go to Golson Street. Golden Street baths. Oh yes. And of course I loved swimming in them days, so when I worked in what do you call it, in Commercial Street, you know, there, I used to go to Golden Street during the lunch break and go in there and have a swim. Tuppence used to cost 2p for a swim there. I used to love that. And I used to have a roll and butter for my lunch, and that was it.
Right, we're going to stop it there.
Yeah.
Because we must... I'd like to ask you, where did you first meet your wife?
When we lived there, the first house, that was in Charles Street, Stepney. Just on the corner, round the corner, was Wellesley Street. The first house round the corner, mind you, that was 20 yards down, because all the bakehouse was down there. So this was the first house. There used to be a very, very poor family living. The father was a very, very ill man. He had a big family. He had a son exactly my age. He and I, we used to play together as children. They had sisters there that used to be friends with my sisters. And they became very, very, very poor. Very poor family. And I used to take bread in there, collars on a Friday, never took any money. And if there was any cakes left over, you know, during the week I used to take it into them, never took any money. They were a very, very poor family. And the years went by from Highbury. I never saw him or anything like that. When I came back to there, and all of a sudden I'm walking along in Whitechapel High Street, and who should I bump into? This boy, Joe Cantor. Put his arms around me. Simon, you know, and all the rest of it there. What are you doing? As I told him. So, at any rate, how shall I say this? He was in the cabinet maker. And who I met afterwards through him, they were also cabinet makers, all in the furniture business. But then one day I met him and he said, "What are you doing tonight?" I was only about 17 at the time, but I was a fully qualified barber then, 17, and getting on for 18 there. He says, "Listen, I'm invited out tonight. I'm supposed to bring a friend with me. How about you fancy coming there?" And this was just in a turning off Cable Street. Well, I says, "I'll come with you. You know, I don't mind. Do I have to bring anything in?" "No, I don't bring anything till the evening in." At any rate, I'd never been down that way, and I was scared stiff. Because down there, police used to walk along two-handed. Never used to walk one policeman. And he was down one of the side turnings there. At any rate, it was a nice house, and we had a nice evening there. There was girls, and there was boys there, a few of us. And we didn't have drink alcohol or anything like that in those days.
Did you smoke?
Yes, I did. I smoked when I was 14. I wanted to make myself big, you understand, so I smoked. I smoked out the puff out of it. But at any rate, that's where I first was introduced to my wife. She was the daughter of the house. Okay? And a few months went by, and I met her again. And then we started going out together. Barbers used to close 1 o'clock on Monday. See, half a day, because they worked on Sunday, you see. So we used to close 1 o'clock. That meant that we used to shut the shop, clean the windows, you know, and put all the stuff back in the windows and then go home. And I used to meet my wife, and we used to go to pictures in the afternoon. Or if it was in the evening, we'd go to the Rivoli in Mile End Road. The Rivoli was a very famous cinema. And as I progressed, then we went to the West End. And so I used to get free tickets for in Charing Cross Road, not in Tottenham Court Road. I forget.
The Dominion now.
That was, yeah. As you go into Tottenham Court Road there's a cinema where Joe Loss. I used to attend to Joe Loss.
You used to do his hair?
I used to polish his hair. Honestly, I used to polish his hair for him. He lived in Hanbury Street, That's where the shop was, in Hanbury Street, is it? And it comes to me.
It does.
He used to be Godfrey Phillips, the cigarette manufacturers there. And he lived in the side turning there. I used to attend to his brother as well, and his father. And I remember Joe when his first engagement and all of that. I know the whole history of him. At any rate, he used to play in also in Hammersmith. Hammersmith Lady Dance. Do you ever know that? Well, this is what we used to go to when we had a few bob to spare, because it was a very expensive place then. To us, but it's a wonderful dance place. At any rate, he was second band there. Then he got promoted to this place, the Astoria. See how it comes?
This is how you got your free tickets, was through him?
Through him. I used to take his dinner suit, his dress shirt, down into the park there, into the dance place there, and that's how I used to get in, and he used to give me a ticket to go in. So I used to meet my wife upstairs there, and we used to go in, had 2 free tickets. Then we'd come out and we'd go to the Coventry Street corner house, and we'd have a cup of tea and a bit of cake or something, and then we'd go to another cinema in the evening. And we'd come out of there, either we'd come straight home, or now and if it was early, we went to see a show one night, Abe's Irish Rose.
Tell me, there were trams in there?
Of course.
Was the underground there?
Of course there was, but nothing like it is today.
No, so how did you used to get to the West End?
Bus.
By bus?
Oh yeah. We used to get by bus right to the West End, because we're near Aldgate.
Was it bus or was it tram?
No, bus.
It was bus.
Oh yeah, there was no trams in the city in them days.
No?
Oh no. Oh no. There was trams in the East End, all along Mile End Road, Commercial Road, and then one went to Stamford Hill. There was another one went to City Road, number 47. I can tell you that.
But none went to the West End?
None.
No trams?
No trams, or only buses. Single deckers.
Single deckers?
Well, you went upstairs, but there was no covers. You had if it was raining, there was what do you call it? A schmutter that you put over, what do you call it? And there was the driver. The drivers were uncovered. They had sat in a little alcove on their own, and they also used to pull up tight behind them, you know, when it was raining. Oh yeah, it was all open.
It's hard to imagine.
This is really true. That was in the 20s. Don't forget, in the early 20s. The most expensive film that I ever did pay to go and see was The First Talkie with...
Al Johnson?
Who?
Was it Al Johnson?
Al Johnson.
The jazz singer.
Yeah. That's the most expensive. I think I paid £1.
Did you have to queue to go in to see that?
I think I did, yeah. My wife was with me, but she paid her own. She wouldn't let me pay.
You used to go Dutch?
We went Dutch, only that once, because, I mean, it was £1. I mean, it was a hell of a lot of money, £1.
Why was it so expensive? Because it was the first...
The first all talkie.
Do you remember which cinema it was at?
Who?
Do you remember which cinema that was
Yeah,
at?
it was also the Astoria.
The Astoria.
Oh,
Right, let's stop.
We
Your
got
wife's name is...
Rebecca Mendelovich. That was the family name.
And where did her parents come from?
They came from, not Poland, near Poland there. We used to call him...
Don't worry. Did she come over...
No, she was born.
She was born here also.
She was the youngest child from the second wife. He'd been married... My late father-in-law was over 100 when he died. And he was 70-odd when my wife was born. He had a beard like a very, very frum man. Very, very frum. He never spoke English at all. Or her mother never spoke. He was a feather merchant. A light industry, you know. But he was a marvellous man. You know, the way he used to work with the bale, how he used to bale, and they used to put puch. Do you know what puch is? Goose, what do you call it? They're very expensive.
The down.
The down, oh yes, that's used to separate them. And he was a fairly comfortable man at one time, but his sons were all cabinet makers. And eventually when things started to go wrong in the cabinet making world, he had to keep them. When they got married, they had families, he had to keep them as well. And he had a daughter living upstairs, a married daughter, in this house where they lived. And that's how it was.
And what did she do for a living?
She was a fur machinist.
A fur machinist?
Fur machinist, yeah. I did most of my courting in the last place. They used to work till 2 o'clock in the morning when they were busy.
And where was this place you used to work?
In Cannon Street Road. There was a chemist there, and by the side of the chemist there was a door that you went through into a big place there, and they had all the machines in there, all the sewing machines and the pressing machines, and I learned how to nail, I don't know if you know in the fur business, to stretch it. Yeah. And I used to do that. Well, I was waiting for her. I wouldn't let her go home on her own, you understand? And so
where you got married?
yeah, I got married in Stepney Orthodox School, in Stepney Green. We got married there, and we had a reception in a private house where there was a workshop there. Also, it was a relation of my on my wife's family side, and we had just an ordinary two in there, very nice. Nothing very ornate.
Did you go on a honeymoon?
Pardon?
Did you go on a honeymoon?
No. I had the shop then.
And this was the shop in Cable Street?
I had the shop in Cable Street then, yes.
And you moved into the shop in Cable Street?
Yes, well, in the meantime, I'd been decorating it, had it decorated, and I was very comfortable there. It used to be a ladies' hairdressing saloon, part of it there, that we converted it into a sitting room. So we used to have the radio there, you know. We were very, very posh in them days. We used to have the gramophone at first. Of course, a wind-up gramophone with a big horn. And then we had a lovely, a Decca, small gramophone, but wind up. And then we had a radio. It was, you had to change the plugs in it. If you wanted a different station, you had to put a plug in there. And that was my brother-in-law's. And he gave it to us as a wedding present. And, that was a marvellous thing, that was.
And the year this was again?
This was in 1927.
Did you find the general strike affected your trade
The
at all?
what?
The general strike in 1926?
Well, in 1926, I remember that. I was working for a firm then. In 1926, I was working in Bancroft Road, right the way down there. And I used to well, I didn't even have a bike. I was mad on roller skating. I was a very, very good roller skater, truthfully. And I used to go all the way down to Burnett Road on skates, you know. And these lorries with soldiers on them, you know, down to the dockland. And this was also with me. I used to go all the way to Brixton for the roller skating. There was a big roller skating place there, and they were the top in England. And I wanted to join the club there. If I tell you the name of it, you'll laugh. It was called the Brixton All Blacks. God's honest truth.
And really, did your wife roller skate as well?
No. Oh no, I used to go there. And I had some friends with me, that was my entertainment. And I used to get back about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I wasn't good enough. They wouldn't accept me. So then I packed it up. Didn't do it anymore. I did it, but didn't go all that way. Then I started to learn. We used to play solo. I used to have my neighbours in Cable Street. We used to come in and we used to play for pennies, you know, solo. Then somebody interested me in bridge. This is really true. And in them days, it wasn't bridge like it is today. It was auction bridge, you see, which is a different type of bridge altogether. And there was one club in the East End, a bridge club, and I joined that bridge club. And my miss, I'll tell you the stories. It's not this bridge club.
Did she play as well?
No.
She never played?
She was never a card player. She used to play Kaluki in the finish, but that's about. But I used to go to this bridge club, and she started getting annoyed with me there. And one day I left her there, and I went up, and she said, "You'll be sorry." And she brought my two children, my eldest son and my daughter, and she was only a little baby in the pram, and left it there in the bridge club.
Teach you a lesson?
To teach me a lesson. I'll never forget that. All these things are so true. This is the way. And then I started to play at home. I got together few people, and we started to play bridge. Then things got bad in Cable Street. There was all these processions, and with the National Front and all that kind of thing down there.
Tell me the years of this. You first went to Cable Street in 27.
No, I went there before 27. I was there 27. I went there in 26. Right. I was there 27 and 28.
And when was your first child born?
My son was born in the London hospital. We were married in 27. So he was born in 28. Something like that. In the London hospital. And my daughter was born in the London hospital in 1930.
And when did you notice, when you were saying about the processions down Cable Street, when did you first remember them? When did you first recall them?
There was always trouble down there. You didn't know who it was or what it was. They were always fighting. It was a seaman. There used to be fighting down there. And there used to be some terrible troubles. Terrible troubles.
So were you there when Winston Churchill was home, when they had the siege of Cable Street, or had you already left?
No, I had left, but I knew he was there. Of course. He was there, Winston Churchill. I was living in Bedford Street when there used to be the Jewish, used to be a Jewish, like these gangs. There was a gang, I forget the name of it as well, a very well-known gang of Jewish, and that's when Winston Churchill was down there.
Were they Jewish gangsters?
Of course they were. They were Russian, like Russians. I don't remember the name. You know, if I see you on Saturday, I'll tell you that I'm going to write them down. And I'll tell you the names, well-known names of these people. And there were gangsters even in Highbury.
How long did you live in Cable Street for?
We left there in... No, wait a moment. I'm getting a little bit mixed up. I didn't go to Cable Street in 27. I was there in 29. In 29. And I left there in 1937.
So you were there for nearly 8 years?
Yes. 1937 I left Cable Street,
so
just before the war,
yes,
the Second World War.
So all the marches.
And I took a shop in Stamford Hill, the bottom of South Tottenham, and I had a flat in Gladesmore Road.
What made you want to leave Cable Street?
I hated it.
You did?
My family wouldn't come to me because, well, I mean, it was too... I mean, we thought of ourselves a little bit higher than that kind of thing. He said my mum wouldn't come down there at all. I think she came once. And so we moved to Stamford, the bottom of Stamford Hill there, and I had a nice flat there, and I had a barber shop at the back of a tobacconist. And my children, I went to, what do you call it, synagogue there, when it was first opened.
Egerton Road?
Pardon?
Egerton Road?
No, Egerton Road was the top one. There was one a bit further down. It's still there. It's still there. I was there at the opening. And I knew the people who financed it, the Baron people, and I went there. But I was open on Saturday. I worked on Saturday. You understand? So all I could go there was for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, something like that. But my children went to Hebrew classes there in the school.
So you'd had more children by then, didn't you?
Yes, oh yes, I had My third son was born in Cable Street as well. So there was three of us there. Then when we came back up to Stamford Hill, my daughter was born. So I had two sons and two daughters then. And I got called up in the army. In 1939, I got called up in the army. And my wife got evacuated. When the war started, she was evacuated to Paynton, near Torquay. And I went down there, and we had I shared a house down there. It was a beautiful house. The garden there, we had, wait a moment, it was 65 Heinz, how many in Heinz soups?
57.
We had 57 fruit trees in the garden there. That's when I started to learn a little bit of gardening. And I got called up.
Called up to where? Into the army?
In the army. Oh yeah. Where did I get called up? Near Blackdown. Near Blackdown.
So what was your regiment?
Mine, I was in the heavy artillery.
Heavy artillery.
The heavy artillery.
So that was the tanks?
No, the
guns?
what do you call it? The anti-aircraft. But I was on the big guns.
Placed where?
I'll tell you where I was stationed for quite a while. All over the place I was with this regiment. I became 6 weeks in the army. I got one stripe. One.
That's cool.
I was 6 months. No, I had a very powerful voice. Always did have a very powerful voice. And I had a special job in the army there that you needed a big voice for. And so I became a bombardier then, 2 stripes I had. And I got posted just outside Reading. I got posted to a company there. And from there, I joined up with another one, so we made a new regiment. It was 577 Battery, heavy artillery. Yeah. And we got posted to Hull. And Hull was devastated. I can't describe to you what we only went through. We used to have to pour water down the barrels of the guns because it was red hot. And the next day we read in the paper, no enemy activity reported over the country last night. This is how it was. And we'd be sitting on these wet sandbags. And we were in a terrible state there. But at any rate, I was there for quite a long time. And I had an uncle and aunt living in there, in Hull. But we were on duty 24 hours a day. And I was there for a long, long time. And all of a sudden I got this trouble in my back. We had, we used to fire a special way, you see, it was called baronet. We used to fire at a specific spot. You never saw the aeroplanes, but we all used to concentrate on that, because if an aeroplane's coming along this way, it would go right into that kind of thing. But what happened was that these shells that we were firing had shrapnel in them, and the shrapnel used to come down, and I got a shrapnel wound in the spine, the bottom of my spine. So they took me to Hull Infirmary. I had an operation there. I was only there for 3 days, still plastered up and everything there. All military personnel, get dressed, you've got to go. So many, civilians were hurt. The bombing and all the rest of it. I had a very, very lucky escape while I was there. Right opposite the station, we saw the first, bomb? High development bomb that was fell on a store. And I was 200 yards round the corner, waiting for a bus to take me back to camp. Just 200 yards round the corner, and they were dropping the fire bombs as well, and it used to have horses kept in the stables for the station, which used to deliver. And there was a bus station there, and the tyres were bursting there, and the horses were going mad. Tell you, there was a fellow with me. He ran over there and he smashed the lock on the door and opened it up, and all the horses ran all the way up Anleby Road. I'll never forget that Anleby Road. But at any rate, there was also a nice shul in Hull. Also, so once in a blue moon, we'd get a Saturday afternoon off. So we used to go to, me and a sergeant, we used to go to the shul on a Saturday, and next door to the shul was a shop there. My next door neighbour was born there, yeah, and used to sell worsted suitings, material. And now and again he'd invite us in for Shabbos lunch there, and we'd go. There was a nice little shul and everything. But at any rate, I had to get dressed, still had everything on. They brought my clothes in, my suit and everything, still on a stretcher, on an ambulance, and they took us to Driffield, a town a little bit further up in Yorkshire. I was there, and of course all the stuff started all over again. How shall I say it? I was bleeding so badly that I wore a diaper. So in the finish I had to take the diaper off, but to give it to them, they wouldn't allow us to take that with us. And we went, and I was there. And
did your wife know that you'd been wounded?
She never knew. No, I told her that I'd had an operation. I told her it was piles, things like that. That's what I told her. And we were in this hospital out there. I was there a week. We had no medicaments at all. We used to give us blooming food to eat there that used to bind you. We couldn't use a toilet or things of that description, and we were in a right old state there.
How many people do you reckon were in this place?
In that ward that I was in, about 30. And that's when I got in touch with my aunt in Hull. I got in touch with her, and she came out to see me there in the hospital with her daughter, Jeanne. She was only 14 at the time there. And the next thing, about a week later, all get dressed, right, all stretcher cases, a big, a whole fleet of them, of Green Line coaches. And Green Line coaches were ambulances. I was the first one to go in, so I'm on the top. There were 3 layers, the bottom, the middle, the top, and I'm right at the far end, on both sides, and we had a nurse on the bus with us, with, she had bottles if you wanted to pee and things like that, and pills, things like that. God knows how long it took, I don't know. And we finished up in a place there, all first in, I was the last one. 2 boys grabbed hold of the stretcher and took me out because I was a stretcher case, you see. And I got taken out and I looked up to typical Yiddish boys. I says, where am I? He says, you're in Leeds. He says, didn't you know? I says, no. I says, in this Leeds? I says, look, I've got a brother living here. I wonder if you could find him for me. He said, of course. We'll find him for you. Tell us, where does he live? I says, how do I know where he lives? I says, his name is Cohen, Maury Cohen. I says, and all his in-laws live here in Leeds. And his wife is Sissy Cohen, and he's got a son and a daughter, and they live there and all the rest of it. Leave it to us, we'll find him. We'll find him. Can rate. So they take us to this hospital there, and we're in there, and the doctor comes round, and I'm the first one he comes to. And he breaks the stitches. Just left me on the bed, with my head down, my backside up, and broke the stitches there, and I screamed. I mean, I bit my lip to stop me from screaming, and it started pouring with blood again there. He says, I'm sorry, but he said, it's open. It's all right now, you'll heal. And gave me an injection afterwards. And I was in that hospital for about a month.
What year was this?
1941. I was in there, in this hospital in Leeds, and then they let me out. Just in uniform, in a special hospital uniform. And I used to go to a cinema there for free, you see. Everything was free for us. And I met a lot of Jewish people. And wait a moment, all of a sudden, a day after, who should you think walks in? My nephew, God rest his soul. I lost, my brothers had a twin, a boy and a girl, and the boy got this, what do you call it, complaint, and he died afterwards. But he was the first one that came to see me, and he told me that he'll tell his father exactly where I am. And the same evening, my brother came. And then my sister-in-law came to see me, and then after a week I was allowed out, so I used to go to watch the cricket there in Hull. And I was introduced to a very famous family in Hull there. I don't know if you, in Leeds, I don't know if you know Leeds at all. There's a big place there where it's such a shul, and it's got everything there. And the turning is exactly like the East End of London. Schmaltz herrings and pickle herrings and all that down there. And I used to go there, and I met an old friend of mine there from London with his son there as well. And I got a month's then my wife was pregnant, and she was having the baby in Paynton. And I applied for leave, and I got a month's sick leave. So right, and I went all the way to Paynton. Now what it was, I had this injection there. If I'd sit down for a while, I'd get this pain and I'd pass out. I had to lay down flat on the floor to stretch the spine, and I was all right in a minute. But this happened to me in a cinema. I had to stand up and lay on the floor. It happened in a cafe, you know, also the same kind of thing. And I travelled all the way. I got a ticket to go to Paynton, you know, and on the train, all the seats, you couldn't sit down anywhere, so I laid in the passage. And I laid on the floor there. And then I had to change at Exeter. And I got to Paynton, and then I got to find out where to go. So I went to the, in Paynton Station, there was a war bloke who was there with us for soldiers and everything, and I told him the name and everything of where, and he found out where I could go to see my children. Yeah? And he told me where Mum was, and it was in Torquay. Beautiful place. It was a private mansion that had been turned into a hospital, a maternity. Only, see? And I'll never forget what a walk there was to get there. There was a bloody mile, and on the way I got this pain, and there was a chair, one of these wooden chairs, and I lay down on that, and after a minute I was all right. And I went up to the hospital there and saw my wife. She just had the baby.
Did she know
a girl.
you were coming?
She guessed it because I'd written to her and said, if I can, I'll try. And so I saw her. She just had the baby, the little girl, a lovely, beautiful baby. And while I was there, the nurses were making a fuss of me because she had told them that I'd just come from hospital, you see. And all of a sudden I called the nurse over and I says, excuse me, nurse, is there anywhere where I can lay? I said, I've got this pain again. She took me up on the roof. And I laid there. I was only there for a couple of minutes or something like that. And touch wood 1,000 times, that was the last that I ever had.
This pain?
I never had any more of that. It was the last time. And I had a month's leave. 2 days before I was supposed to go back, I got through to this chap on the station to get me through to on the telephone. And I hadn't had any my ordinary leave. So I got another 2 weeks leave, or 10 days or something like that. And they said, well, what are you going to do about money? We can't send the money on. I said, I'll wait till I come back and I'll get the money then. So I had another 10 days there. And I went back to Hull. It wasn't in Hull anymore. So I had to go to the station there, and they took me to a firing camp where my unit was. And from there we got posted right away um, to Weymouth. Now Weymouth was all action all the time. I was down there for a long time. I was in Weymouth, and I was on the Portland, right to the top on Portland Bill, and I was made sergeant there. You see, I was a sergeant there. I wasn't a full sergeant. I was what they call a lance sergeant. A sergeant, a full sergeant, had the 3 stripes and a gun across. I had the 3 stripes, but no gun. And I'm not telling you the stories in between.
No.
That I got stripped 1,001 times, but because nobody else could do that job for me, you see, I was very good at in arithmetic, in figures.
Of course, you had to line those guns up.
No, there was something else I had to do, also very, very important. Every time that gun fired, it altered the what do you call it inside it. So I had to alter the fuse factor correction. We used to have to put fuses on, you understand, and I used to work out the corrections. I used to shout out, we had a predictor over here, a height finder here, and I used to get a girl's spotters who used to find a plane for me, and I used to have to call out the bearings and angles. And with my loud voice, you understand, I had to do it. And they would say, on target, you see, they'd be following my instructions, and I'd hold my hand up, and still till I got the height, you see. And so then I had a microphone. We had 4 big guns all the way around, and I was the GPOAC, the gun position officer's assistant. I understand. If anything happened to him, I was in charge of the whole section, you see. And he used to give me orders, and I had the microphone that I used to give orders to the guns about when to fire, when to stop, and all this kind of thing. And I had some very, very lucky escapes. Very, very lucky escapes. I was all right in Weymouth, but then I went on to another part there, and I was out in the open, no cover at all. And I'm standing there, all the guns are under cover, and I'm standing there with and that was the, what do you call it, bombs? The
Buzz bombs?
The buzz bombs. How many fell within 50 yards of where I was? But thank goodness nobody ever got hurt. We never saw any things of that description. But
when the war finished, where did you go to from there?
My wife had left Paynton. There was sirens every night. They were always after Plymouth, you understand? And my wife and my daughter were machine gunned on the beach in Paynton. Fortunately, you know, it was one of these going out and just let off the machine guns and things like that. And so she had a sister living in Gerrard's Cross. She got through to her sister, and her sister found a flat for her, for 2 rooms. And I didn't know where to go, but she wrote and told me, Gerrard's Cross, so and so and so and so. So the next leave that I had, I went to Gerrard's Cross, and got on the telephone to my sister-in-law. She was on the phone, and there was quite a number of Jewish people had evacuated out there, and told me where to go, and I went and I got there, and I met my wife. And then I only had 7 days leave, you see. And then I went back, and now wait a moment, she was pregnant. She was pregnant then, and it was Christmas time.
Yeah?
It was Christmas time, 1944. Well, Christmas time. And I went back to my unit, and they wanted to, said, you can't go, you know, things like that. You're going to Germany. So I said, well, look, my wife is in a state like that. I said, can't that be put back? I said, she's 8 months gone. I understand? No. Look, you're going to Germany, you're booked and everything, you've had your leave. So I finished up in Hanover, in Germany. I was there for 1 week. I got sent back. My unit got sent back to Weymouth. And so I applied for leave, and I got leave to be home, and I was there a couple of days after the baby was born. The baby was born in the flat. Didn't take it into hospital. And the following year, I got demobbed in 1945. January 1945, I got demobbed.
We're back to Sharon Gross?
Yes, she was there all the time, you see. In the meantime, I met somebody in Chalfont St Peter, and I knew him from the East End. He used to be a photographer in the East End, quite a well-known man, Yiddish man, and he's on the council. And I said, when I met him, I was shocked and everything, I said, look, there's five of us, and we're in 2 rooms upstairs. I said, there's no bathroom, no nothing there. Leave it to me. About 2 weeks go by. He says, come here. Go back to Chalfont St Peter. He says, there's a man waiting for you there. He'll show you the house there. There's a house on the council estate. And we went there, and it was a very nice house. But there was a woman living there downstairs, and she was moving the following week. So we'd have the whole house then.
And this was rented?
Pardon?
This was going to be a rented accommodation?
You rented accommodation, yeah. And where do you think it was? Right opposite Mrs. G. Water.
Really?
Where she lives.
Now.
That's how I met the G. Waters there, you see. And so we moved into that house there, and we had a lovely garden. In the finish, I bought the house from the council.
And where did you go to work when you...
High Wycombe.
High Wycombe. So you had a
I saw an advert in the barber shop, funnily enough. In the barber shop, I saw an advert. And I was friendly with the barber, you see. And he couldn't employ anybody there. And he had the hairdresser's journal there. And so I phoned up. And he said, yes. Can you come along now, bring your tools with you? It was about 12 o'clock. I said, well, how am I going to get there? I said, Gerrard's Cross, I go by train. Straight to High Wycombe. Okay. So I packed mine. What tools did I have?
Scissors?
I had scissors and a comb and razors and that. I get to High Wycombe, I've got to find a place. So I saw this shop, a barber shop. So I went in there. There was a Yiddish boy there. So I said, he says, no. He says, my father works there. He says, it's down the road. Go down there on the London road. He says, my father works there. He says, you'll be all right there. He says, I can't employ you here. And so I went down there, and I worked there on the Friday afternoon. He says, can you come tomorrow, Saturday? I says, yeah, of course. I says, listen.
You want the money?
He said, well, I'll see you all right, don't worry about that. And so I went there on the Saturday as well. I was there by 9 o'clock in the morning, and that was still 6:30 in the evening. And very small, cramped place it was. Four barbers, 3 barbers, and myself was the 4th one there. And I worked for him all my years. 41 years.
Really?
I worked for him. I worked there in High Wycombe for 3 years. His mother died there, you see, and he got fed up with it there, and he bought this Swiss cottage business. It was just by Swiss Cottage station there. And I went there, and of course I was his top man, and he gave me a whole month to fit the place up. He gave me a full week's wages, and he gave me a few pound on top of it, paid my fare for me, all this kind of thing. And we opened in 1949, Christmas, a week before Christmas, 1949. And I became managing director there. I had a share as a director in the business.
How many shops did he have?
We had 44 staff in Swiss Cottage.
In one shop?
Yeah, 44 staff we had there. And then it was upstairs, downstairs, and then we had...
Just men's or ladies?
No, ladies.
And
Oh,
men.
the boss's wife was the top hairdresser. And we had... and of course, I used to make for all the stock, everything. I used to make all the shampoos, all the frictions. I used to make everything that was needed in for the salon there. And I was doing quite well, let's face it.
You still lived at Gerrard's Cross?
Pardon? I still lived in Chalfont.
Chalfont.
Oh, I lived in Chalfont there. My house had been requisitioned in Stoke Newington that we left, where I'd lived. What do you call it? They made 2 flats out of it there. Had 5 bedrooms there, and a bathroom upstairs, plus a downstairs, what do you call it, a flat downstairs, and they made it in the middle. So they lived on the ground floor and the basement, and the other one lived at the top there. So I arranged it with a fellow to get the rent from them, and he pays the rates and everything. Once, I think, in all those years, in the 4 years, I think I got £3. Every 5 minutes he had to pay for something else. The council never paid a damn thing. At any rate, it got to such a pitch that, thank goodness, when I was working in Swiss Cottage, I was earning a decent living already. And so I got in touch with a certain party. It was the mayor of Hackney, village boy. I knew his father was one of my customers, and all the rest of it there. And he was in the building, the housing there, and he got me back my house. One of them was moving out just the same, and so I went there, and I had to fiddle about it, things like that. But where they took the mezuzahs off of the doors and everything there, the paint is still, you can still see the marks. It wasn't painted, it wasn't done. It cost me, I've still got the bills. Every bill in that house, I can still prove it to you. It cost me just under £1,000.
Which was a lot of money.
Which was a lot of money in them days. I had to borrow money. You know, I didn't have £1,000. I had to borrow money, and I paid the builders to do all the work. And it was a big house, fantastic house. And I was right next door to the yeshiva. They saw, oh yes, and then I had my car. My governor bought me my first car.
What car was it?
I had a Hillman. It was a beautiful car. It really was. They used to use those for taxis. You know, in what do you call it, in the countryside, all these cars were taxis there. I had that car, and he paid for it. I didn't pay. He used to pay he used to allow me £10 a month for the petrol, you know, and things of that description. God rest his dear soul, he died. And I was with him for a long time, and I took over the shop. I used to take the money, pay the wages. I used to have to pay, and don't forget, 44 staff.
Lots of staff.
I used to be the last one out on a Friday night, because I had to do, every one of them worked on commissions. All the barbers, all the hairdressers.
So you had to work all the commissions out.
I had to used to work. So I used to come home, close the shop at 8 o'clock on a Friday night. By the time I got home there, it was 8:45, 8:30, 8:45. Had dinner, so switch the television on, hear the 9 o'clock news, and switch off. And I used to be working till 11:30, 12 o'clock, getting all the figures. I used to have to work out everything there on that shop there, and I did that all those years.
Did you go to? Did you belong to the shul, one of the shuls, when you were there?
I belonged to the Orthodox shul, you know, from my wife's family. There used to be a synagogue in Christian Street. It used to be called the Commercial Road Talmud Torah. My children, when I was in the army, I didn't say that. When my son got bar mitzvahed, I got a weekend pass, the only one that was ever granted, because I was in a firing camp where they were teaching us all the intricate things, and I was a sergeant, and they let me go away for the weekend. He said, now if you're away 1 hour late, you'll be finished here. And I did. I went all the way back to Commercial Road, Tamatoira, and my wife was there. She was living in Forest Gate at the time with her sister. And they all came up from Forest Gate. My sister-in-law made a very nice meal. My mother, God rest her dear soul, came from Wembley, you know, to the shul for the minister. My sisters and everybody, they were all working. You understand? So nobody could come there. But at least they got the mitzvah there, in there. And this is the Adas Yisrael. So I belong to it now 50...
You still belong?
I still belong to it. 55 years I belong to the shul there. My wife is buried there. Now then, my sister-in-law, I've still got a sister-in-law, that is my wife's late brother. He died, and his wife, she belongs to the same shul. She give her the money every 6 months. She used to pay the shul money for me. And nothing ever happened and all that. Generate. When my wife died, no, while we were away, we never paid the shul money. I was away for 6 years. I was 6 years in the army, and nobody did it. Generate. When we came back, I went back to the shul there, and there was Sir, he was Sam when I knew him, but after he became Sir, and then he became Lord. A Lord. He was the head of the shul. And I told him what happened. And he said, well, I said, I can't afford to pay all that 6 years' money. So he said, we settle a thing for about £20. And I gave him the £20, and he made me all settled again. And so when my wife died, I went down there and said, you know, so-and-so. He said, I'm sorry. He said, you can't be buried in Enfield. I said, what do you mean? He says, Enfield is closed. He says, you'll have to go to Cheshire. I says, now listen. All my wife's family, her father, mother, her brothers and sisters and everybody, every one of them is buried in that cemetery. And we always said that we would also like to be buried. You know how much that cost me in the finish? My sons were with me, and they said, Dad, leave it to us, we'll pay it. Cost £700 for my wife to be buried there. They paid it. All my children put £100 each, 7 children, they paid the £700. And consequently she's buried in a private grave in Enfield. And we bought the next one to it, so I shall be next to her. And I still go up there twice a year to pay my shul money up there. But when I came to, from what do you call it, when my wife died, I didn't, who should I go to? I can't get anybody to come from the East End to come out to take the service. So somebody told me about Northwood. And he gave me... living
where? You were living
I was living here.
Here in Pinner Hill.
Oh yeah, Pinner Hill Road. So somebody told me about the, what do you call it, there in Northwood, gave me the telephone number, so I phoned him up. He said, well look, the minister is away on holiday. He says, oh no, I've got no jurisdiction over at all. I said, oh, forget it. So somebody told me about Pinner. So I went down there, and I saw Grunwald. And I told him, I said, I'd like, we whole family are going to sit here with Shiva, with me, and all the rest of it. So he says, yes, he says, I've got another. There was another one. He's got the jewellery shop in Hatch End. His wife died also the same week as my wife. But he didn't sit Shiva. He sat Shiva for one night. So Grunwald came here every night. And believe me, he got a wonderful week's wages from me and my family here every night. And so every Friday I went to shul there.
At the Pinner United at Cecil Park.
The first night that we went there, they made a fuss with my sons outside. They called us in and back and all, you know, the Orthodox. And then I started to go there every Friday. Not one person even said hello or good Shabbos or anything. Even Grunwald used to walk past me and not even nod. I got so upset over it. Really upset. Now, I was going to fully retire then. And so I met, what do you call it, in your shul?
Andrew.
Not Andrew. Used to be a customer of mine, him and his father. He's married to a non-Jewish. She looks after the flowers.
Oh, that's the other Mrs. Gross, isn't it?
Mrs. who?
Elaine, is it Elaine?
Not Gross.
No. Michael Lever.
No, you got it. I know Michael. How long? When he was single, I knew him. And I know his first wife that he had, that he got divorced and all the rest of it. And I met him. And he said, well, why don't you come to dinner? And I came there on the Friday night. I met him. He introduced me to Sharon and so, and I sat down there. And I've been going there ever since.
So it's only fairly recently?
Pardon?
In
No,
the
it's
last
4 years.
4 years.
4 years I've been. So I said to my son, Jerry, I said, I feel terribly upset. I said, I enjoy going there. I'd like to give a donation to the shul. So he said, well, why don't you join it? I said, look, I belong to... He said, that, so what? You want to go, it might be cheaper for you. Find out, because you don't want a burial or anything like that. Just so. So I had... I forget who it was who came here.
Was it Barbara Hill?
Who?
Must have been before Barbara Hill.
David, he was the chairman.
Tony Sacker.
So, what do you call it, Sacker? His wife,
Francis.
Frances, came here.